Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with number 8 in our Scarlatti Sonata Escapade. Now, it's been quite a while since we've talked about Scarlatti sonatas, and I wanted to do a particularly special one that was the subject of multiple requests, and that's Kirkpatrick number 208 in A major. This is a very special sonata. And in fact, it could be one of the sonatas we include in our series, How It's Done, because it's worth looking at with the score for a number of reasons. First of all, as you know, Scarlatti is generally regarded as a composer of incredibly zippy, brilliant, show-offy sonatas, often with a Spanish flavor. But this one is an Adagio. And in fact, it's marked Adagio e cantabile. That's Adagio and songful, like a song. And that raises some very interesting questions as regards performance practice, such as how do you do cantabile on a harpsichord? And this one is particularly tricky for a number of reasons. And for all of those reasons, I'm going to do something that I don't normally do with these talks, but I want to do it anyway. First of all, I'm going to play the whole sonata, which is more than 4 minutes long. And second of all, I'm going to play it on the harpsichord with our usual fantastic Jan Peter Belder here, who's just a Peter Jan Belder. Sorry, Mr. Belder. I get him confused. Peter Jan Belder, who's wonderful on Brilliant Classics, but we are also going to hear it on the piano. Yes, my friends, we're going to hear it on the piano with Christoph Ulrich on the Tacet label with repeats, because in slow tempos, particularly, repeats encourage the player to ornament the melodic line. And we're going to hear some of that. But beyond even that, I'm going to be showing you one of each of the repeats with the score. And what I would like you to try to do, if you can follow it, is follow the first one, because it's in a slow tempo. It's not hard to follow, with the score. And then I'm going to turn it off for the repeat and just close your eyes and let it float over you. Some of you have mentioned, or one person mentioned, that this sonata has a depth and profundity that reminded him of the late Beethoven sonatas. And I don't think that's an inaccurate comparison. I really don't, especially in the second part of the sonata, where Scarlatti indulges his unbelievable genius for affective dissonance, for writing harmony that just makes you go, oh, ooh. Just that, what you might call that sweet pain of crunching dissonance in, accompanying the melodic line in special places. It's extraordinary. And what's also extraordinary is that this music looks so simple on the page. I mean, it's just a line of music with a simple left-hand accompaniment. But the effect it makes is just extraordinary, because the harmonic context is just so marvelous, as it usually is with Scarlatti. But there's something else I want to show you, and I want to talk about it now so that we get it out of the way, because it really tells you something about performance practice and the aesthetics of the period of the 18th century. And it has to do with my usual obsession with how whacked out period performance people are on the subject of things like when to use vibrato and when not. Now, this particular sonata, in the repeat section, that is the second half of the sonata, because all these sonatas are in AABB is the form, right? They have a first half that gets repeated and a second half that gets repeated. Most of these sonatas anyway. And in this particular case, if you look at the score of the second half, which you will see at the top of the page, in fact, let me put it up for you now. Bloop, there it is. Look on the top left. You will see the word tremolo up at the top left. Now, tremolo means vibrato in those days, because the word vibrato didn't really exist. It actually came into use toward the end of the 18th century. But tremolo means what we know as vibrato, because we have many sources that describe it as, especially in violin playing, as exactly what we know as vibrato, where you put your finger on the string and wiggle it back and forth. Anyway, the harpsichord cannot make vibrato. The piano cannot make vibrato, but the clavichord could. And there were harpsichords and various other instruments that had vibrato attachments added. In German, it was called Bebung. But, and they had, Bebung-o-matic harpsichords and other instruments that could do it. Vibrato was considered so important, so necessary to a melodic line, particularly in a slow tempo, that instruments that really couldn't do it, normally couldn't do it, were actually invented to approximate it, which is the best they could do. Pianos, the early Pleyel pianos in France, they had Bebung capacity, where you could sort of do this on the keyboard and try and get the tone to oscillate. The whole point of that was to be truly cantabile, that is, to make a sound that approximated the human voice. And we know that this is what everybody wanted. I mean, there's no question about it. There's a wonderful little treatise by a guy. Let me see what his name is. I have it here, actually. I'm going to just pop it up. His name was Ignaz Franz Xaver Kurtzinger, and he wrote something in 1793 called the Getreuer Unterricht zum Singen mit Manieren und die Violin zu spielen. In other words, the true what's an Unterricht? You know what I mean? The true examples or lesson in how to sing method, let's say, the true method of singing with ornaments and playing the violin. And he has a wonderful glossary at the end of his book. I mean, a really, really useful, handy glossary. Let me find it here. And in the glossary, here it is, we're in the T's, he tells you what tremolo means. And I'm not going to read the German, because it's in Fraktur, first of all, and in a sort of somewhat blurry PDF, but you can make it out if you need to. And the point is that when he gets to tremolo, one of the things he says is, after describing what it is and how you do it, which is what we know today as vibrato, where you put your finger on the string, and how singers use it and how it's a natural component of all normal singing voices, what he says is that it's absolutely essential that you have to use it if you want to correctly play cantabile. If you're playing an instrument and you want to do cantabile, he says you must use the tremolo, the vibrato. And so that is probably where Scarlatti is coming from. And that's what he wants the players to do. Now, you will see what these players do. There's nothing really they can do except try to be more expressive at the beginning of the second half of the sonata. And the beginning of the second half of the sonata happens to be the part where you get those deep, wonderful, affective dissonances coming too. So it's no surprise that Scarlatti marked his tremolo to occur at that particular spot. So if the player has an instrument that can do it, you're supposed to do it. And if you're not supposed to do it, you're supposed to be as expressive as possible. And the reason I think it's marvelous to hear these two different examples is because you get to hear the difference between how to create a singing tone on the piano versus the harpsichord. Now, it's much, much easier on the piano than it is on the harpsichord, because the piano obviously can sustain the tone and can vary the tone with touch in a much, much more obvious way than a harpsichord can. A harpsichord player is limited to doing things like adjusting the tempo, lingering here and there with the rhythm, and also adding ornaments, and also selecting a tempo that connects the notes together in that wonderful long singing line. And that is exactly what you're going to hear, because Belder here is a full minute faster than Ulrich. The piano can be much slower because it has the ability to sustain the tone. The harpsichord doesn't. So you're going to find this performance to be more flowing, and some of you may find it to be more cantabile for this reason, and this performance to be very much more in the style of the late Beethoven piano sonatas, which works perfectly well with Scarlatti. There is nothing unidiomatic about doing it that way. because the question is whether the music is expressive, and of course it is. It's marvelous. So let me now play you these two examples. And as I said, I'm going to put up the score of page 1. It's a wonderful 2-page sonata, and each section is on 1 page, which just could not be more convenient. So we're going to listen to the first part of each section with the score, and the repeat of that section without the score, so that you can just lay back and let the music soak into your soul, which of course what it's going to do. So here it is, the Scarlatti Sonata in A major, Kirkpatrick number, or K number 208, with Jan Peter Jan. Oh, I'm so sorry. Goodness gracious, I'm dyslexic today. Peter Jan Belder on Brilliant Classics. Gorgeous, beautiful, affecting, an amazing, amazing piece. And now we're going to do the same thing on the piano, on the Tacet label, with Christoph Ulrich. And you will hear the difference. I think this is just fascinating, and I hope you agree. Here we go. So there you are. What a wonderful little symposium this example turns out to be. You get to hear how it's done, you get to hear the Scarlatti Sonata Escapade, and you get your little dose of actual useful information on correct performance practice for music of this period. I hope that has been as fascinating to you as it was for me in putting this together. Keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.